Hello students, in our previous class we were discussing the short story The Man in Black. And it is written by Oliver Goldsmith. So in our previous class we see that Man in Black and our narrator they were going for a expedition which is organized by the government of England for the upliftment of the poor classes. And at the beginning itself, our narrator tells us that Man in Black is a very good friend of him and he don't want to lose him because he has a very strange kind of personality that he is ashamed of his benevolence, his feelings which he feels for the poor. He is very kind and affectionate towards poor and he feels ashamed of that character, of his character or habit we can say. Okay. So after that we see that he called Man in Black the humorist in the nation of humorists to describe his personality. And in our previous class we also see that Man in Black was just giving his idea or his thoughts about poor. He says that they are a weightage, they are a burden on country and they must not be supported by our government. Man in Black said so. But when they were going for that we can say journey, excursion, we see that Man in Black saw a person, a poor, who was begging for his necessity to feed his children and a dying wife. So at that time he sees that whether narrator is noticing him or not, and when he sees that narrator is just looking in the surroundings and he is not paying attention towards him or the beggar, he gave a piece of silver to that particular beggar. So this shows that he has dual kind of personality. He shows that he is a rash person. He don't care about others. He is very selfish person. But at the same time, when he speaks about himself, he says that I am a very harsh person. I am a very selfish person. I don't think about others. And beggars are burden on our society. We should not support them. We should not help them. These are the words of Man in Black. But his deeds are completely different from his words, because when he saw that particular beggar, he felt pity for that beggar and he gave him piece of silver. These things we discussed in our previous class. So in today's class we are going to continue the same story, and in today's class we can see when he give that piece of coin to that particular beggar, he thinks that narrator have not noticed Man in Black. Man in Black thinks he didn't notice, narrator didn't notice him giving the piece of silver to that particular beggar, and it just starts to go from there. They starts to walk forward. And when they were moving forward, Man in Black tells narrator that these kinds of beggars should not be supported. They must not be encouraged, he says. And he tells him two stories of beggars who looted or who robbed women. So he tried to say that we should not support them because they are burden to our society and these are the people who are criminals. He wanted to say these things, but at the same time he feels pity for such kind of people. So he explained the manner in which he would deal with beggars were he a magistrate, and he starts to explain that how he will deal with beggars if he would be a magistrate. Basically he wanted to say that these criminals must not be supported. If I would be a magistrate, I would not have work for them, their upliftment, because they are a burden to our society, and I would have prisoned them. I would have put them in prison. And when they were speaking and moving, and when he was about to begin with the third story, he meet another person, a sailor with wooden leg. a seller with wooden leg. First, he met a old man who was a beggar, and he was begging for his need to support his 5 children, and he is dying, but he wanted to feed them. So that's why he was begging. When they moved and he was telling the story, when he finished his 2 stories, that how few beggars looted or robbed a woman, he was about to begin with his 3rd story, and suddenly a person, a seller with wooden leg, comes there. And when he comes, he became very angry. Who? Man in black. Man in black became very angry, and he starts to examine, or he starts to, we can say, examine the seller. He starts to question him. He starts to question him that how he lost his leg. Basically, here Man in black wanted to say that the man have lost his he haven't lost his leg, but he is pretending. He wanted to show that he is pretending. So with that intention, to just take the truth out of his mouth, he starts to ask him questions. And when he starts to ask questions, even the seller becomes very angry, and the seller says, in a tone as angrily as he, that he had been an officer on board a private ship of war. So this man, the seller with a wooden leg, he was an officer on board a private ship of war, and that he had lost his leg abroad in defense of those who did nothing at home, and he was an officer on a ship of war, and he lost his leg for those people who are sitting at home and doing nothing for the nation. Basically, he wanted to say that he lost his leg in a war to save the country, in protection of the country. And after listening this, Man in black becomes very soft turned person, because he had a feeling of pity. He feel a feeling of pity towards the sailor, because he lost his leg in a war when he was fighting for the protection of the country, and he wanted that the narrator should not notice him, and that's why he starts to find an opportunity in which he would have helped the seller. So he starts to think that how or in which manner he can help the seller without being noticed by narrator. Okay, so what he does, this seller was carrying some chips on his back, some kind of chips, we can say. It may be a device, I guess. So he was carrying some kind of chips at his back, and Man in black starts to inquire. He starts to ask. He asks question to him that how he is selling the chips, so or the matches of the chips. The matches of the chips, how he is selling, at what price. But before seller just answer, or he just say the price, what Man in black does, he suddenly says to have a shilling worth. Before the seller tells the price, Man in black offers him a price that is shillings. So the seller seemed at first surprised at his demand, but soon recollecting himself and presenting his whole bundle, "Here, master," says the seller, "take all my cargo and a blessing into the bargain." So when the seller listens the price, he became surprised. He was very surprised at that price, and he just recollect himself in that situation, and he says, "Here, my master," offering the whole bundle of chips, and says, "Take all my cargo. At this price, you can take all my chips and my blessings into bargain." And he blessed man in black because he was very happy. He is very happy with the offer. Okay. After that, it is after that again, after this incident, again man in black starts to justify the incidents that he have not helped that person, but he have done this deed because it was beneficial for him also. So he starts to say all these things that these chips are very useful. We can use these chips in different manners to our narrator. He starts to explain all these things to narrator. And when they were moving, I cannot tell how long this pandemic upon fragility and marches might have continued, and had into his attention been called out by another object more distinctful than either of the former. So these are the words of narrator. And when they were moving, the third person to whom they met a old lady. They met an old lady, an old woman, and the woman was in rags. Her clothes were torn as well as dirty, and this woman was carrying two children, one on his back and another in his arms. So she was carrying two children. She is a poor woman and she is singing ballads. So she is singing ballads, and it is very difficult. Narrator says that it is very difficult to understand, or to, we can say, describe that whether the woman is singing ballads or she is crying. It means that there is a pain in her ballads. She was singing the ballads in a very painful voice, and here also our man in black starts to feel pity for that woman. So a woman in rags with one child in her arms and another on her back was attempting to sing ballads, but with such a mournful voice that it was difficult to determine whether she was singing or crying. Okay, so it was very difficult to identify, it was very difficult to point out that whether the woman is singing the ballads or she is crying, and on the basis of that particular attire that she is wearing, because it was torn as well as dirty, so anyone can say that she is a very poor woman. And after seeing her, man in black feels pity towards that woman, and he starts to find a way to help this woman, an old woman who was in rags and carrying the children in his arms and another on her back. He starts to find a way to help that particular woman, and he starts to search his pockets. He starts to search his pockets, but he didn't find anything in his pockets. He gave that piece of silver to that old man who was begging for the sake of his 5 children and a dying wife. And after that, whatever money was left with him, he gave it to that seller to purchase those chips, the Oliever or the seller with wooden leg. And when he comes to that old lady, he saw her, he wanted to help her, but there was nothing left with him instead of a shilling. So there was only a shilling left in his pocket. Shilling is basically a very small amount of money. So that was left with man in black, and even though when he saw that he don't have nothing with him, when he was searching his pocket, he was searching his pocket very eagerly, and when he finds nothing in his pocket, he becomes very upset, we can say. He becomes very unhappy. But when he searched a shilling in his pocket, he became very happy. He gave that shilling, and the last shilling, to the woman, and after giving that shilling, even though it is a very small amount of money, but he feels very happy, he feels satisfied because he helped that woman. So this is the personality of man in black which Oliver Goldsmith is trying to display in the story